The model was primed with Vallejo model air primer, and when dry, I began to base coat using the airbrush with Chaos Black. The first airbrush highlight is a 1-to-1 mix of Chaos Black and Codex Gray. Then the second highlight of Codex Gray is applied to sharpen things up. Applying APJ Soft Body Black Wash will shadow all the details in on top and also provide a slight filter that will help pull the colors together. A lint-free cloth is then dabbed over the surface to collect extra wash. We don't want that to pool on our large surfaces. Before the power sword is sprayed, we need to mask everything off from overspray. Then poster tack is used to fill in gaps and seal around the sword hilt. I start off with a base coat of Skull White. When the Skull White has dried, mask off half of the blade using tape on both sides. When looking at either flat side of the blade, tape should be masking off the right side in this step. Hawk Turquoise is applied heavy to the bottom of the blade and feathered up into the Skull White. Chaos Black is then applied heavy to the bottom and feathered into the Hawk Turquoise. Repeat the steps for the other side of the blade, but instead of painting the colors from the hilt to the tip, start your color from the tip, leaving the Skull White at the hilt. The blade is now finished and took 5 minutes to do on my practice piece without a camera in front of my face. Imagine trying to do this by hand with super thin paints. Using GW foundation paint, Talon Flesh, we base coat the face. I've made the mistake of touching my brush onto finished parts before, and since the sword is kind of in the way, I mask it off just in case. Now that the sword is safe, I get back to the face. The first highlight using dwarf skin is applied to all but the deepest areas of detail. And as a side note for people just starting out, whenever we do step layering like we're doing here, where we're going to use like 4 colors, and every time you do another highlight color, you're leaving a little bit of the previous color behind. Whenever you're doing this, like we're working on dwarf skin right now in the video, before you move on to the next step, pause it and make sure that the color is uniform. It doesn't look transparent in any areas. If it does look that way, go back over it a couple times. You know, it doesn't hurt. Sometimes I do that, I skip ahead in these videos, but sometimes it might take 3 to 4 layers. And if you're an impatient person and you want the paint to dry fast, use a blow dryer. That's what I do. I mean, steal your sisters or your moms, or, you know, tell them, if you're brave enough, hey mom, can you get me a blow dryer? And, you know, just take the weird looks that they give you. But it does speed up things, especially if you want to get into commission painting or the things that take a long time to dry, like washes, for instance. I just hit them with a blow dryer, and, you know, don't get too close and melt your model, but it definitely helps. But make sure that each step is uniform before you go to the next one. Elf Flesh is our second highlight color and is applied to the dwarf skin areas, concentrating on where the light is hitting. Our final highlight of bleach bone is applied to the elf flesh areas, making sure not to cover up any of the previous highlights. The shoulder pad inlays are fairly simple and are painted chaos black in this scheme. And then we start laying the base for our gold areas using tin bits. The second color for the gold is shining gold, and pay attention to where the light source is coming from. Time to hardline highlight the gray armor using Codex Gray. I want to keep the scheme high contrast, so only pick out areas that I actually airbrushed with Codex Gray. The wash toned it all down, so using the same color will show. I start the bolter by painting it entirely in Chaos Black. Then the hair is based using GW Foundation Paint Macrite Red. Once the Chaos Black is dry on the bolter, I hardline highlight areas that will stay black using Codex Gray. To make the silver areas pop, I used Vallejo Model Air Steel. The Model Air paint has pigment 10 times smaller than GW and Vallejo's regular paints, which makes the metallics in the line extremely reflective and prevents the glitter effect. The final highlight on the gold areas was done with Vallejo Model Air Gold for the same reason. Space Wolf's teeth are first based with Fortress Gray, then highlighted using Skull White. And since we're in the area, I highlighted the hair with a 1-to-1 mix of Macrite Red and Bleached Bone. The fur loincloth and belt trinket were then base coated with GW Foundation Paint Khemri Brown. While still wet, Bleached Bone was applied. When dry, APJ Dark Sepia Wash was applied to shade the fur. I forgot to film these two steps, so here's the rundown. For the gun holster and anything else leather on the model, VMC Saddle Brown mixed with Liquitex Slow Dry was applied as a base. VMC Cork Brown, also mixed with Slow Dry, was then wet blended into the Saddle Brown. When dry, APJ Dark Sepia Wash was applied, and when that dried, I painted the edge with pure Cork Brown. The wolf skull on the left shoulder pad was based with Dark Flesh, highlighted with VMC Cork Brown all over, then final highlights with Bleached Bone were applied paying attention to where the light would be hitting.